Friends, hi, welcome to day 25 of B365. I hope you're all well. Today's readings in Genesis, we see Joseph, he sits down to eat with his brothers, and he's especially happy to see Benjamin. But then when he sends them on their way again, he comes up with a stunt to try and keep Benjamin with him, try and get them to leave Benjamin. And the brothers have promised their dad, have promised Jacob, we'll remember yesterday, or maybe the day before, sometime recently, the brothers had promised their dad that if they took Benjamin, they would return him safely, that no harm would come to him. And Judah promised Jacob that he would be personally responsible for Benjamin. And so today, when Joseph tries to keep Benjamin back, he says, as his slave, then Judah comes forward and says, please, can I stay in his place? Let this boy go. And he explains what they've said to their dad, and everything that their dad had said and had felt. And so to Joseph, it demonstrated, if you like, that his brothers had a genuine love and concern for their father, that their dad really missed and mourned for Joseph, and also that the brothers had some kind of remorse for selling off Joseph, even though they didn't know that it's Joseph that's talking to them still. It showed Joseph, it clarified those things for him. What this passage does, I think, is it shows the change that God is able to work in people. See the change of attitude from Joseph's brothers, that before they unashamedly went back to their dad and said something must have happened to Joseph, and just all the deceit that was there. And yet today we can see plainly the love and the concern that they have for their father. They'll do anything not to break his heart. On into Matthew, and I don't know about you, when I was a child I was taught red sky at night, shepherd's delight, red sky in the morning, shepherd's warning. And so from the colour of the sky at night you could tell what the weather was going to be like. I was taught that as a kid. I remember it to today, and most of the time it seems to work. Today we see that was around in Jesus' time. It's not a new thing, and yet it's still going strong. Look at verses 2 through to 4 in Matthew's verses today. We see Jesus replied, "When evening comes, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation looks for miraculous sign, but none will be given it except the sign of Jonah." This is Jesus talking to the Pharisees. What is the sign of Jonah? It's not Jonah being rescued from the fish. The Pharisees didn't see that. It's Jonah himself and the way that he preached repentance. And in the same way, the sign of Jonah that Jesus is talking about isn't his death or his resurrection. It's the fact that he's here now preaching repentance. And Jesus is saying that's the only sign you're going to get. That's all you need. That's all you're going to get. And then verses 5 through 12, he starts talking about yeast. And it's not immediately clear at first what he's talking about, but then it starts to make a bit more sense. What he's saying is that the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees is dangerous, and they need to avoid it. At the time, the word for yeast and the word for teaching would have been kind of similar. It would have been a play on words that Jesus was doing. But the Sadducees, they were priests, and they were the kind of people they didn't want to rock the boat. They were pro-establishment. They were happy to keep the Romans in power. They were wealthy. They liked to be comfortable. And then the Pharisees, politically, they're a little bit more radical, but their religion, we've seen a bit already, was all about outward practice and rules and things like that. And Jesus is saying that both of them are pretty disastrous for the lifestyle that Jesus calls us to. There's no space for either of them, really. And the trouble with yeast is that it affects everything around it. If you put a little bit of yeast, the whole loaf rises and it spreads through all of the bread. And so, the trouble with yeast is everything that's around it can get affected. Then you get to verse 13 through to verse 20, the end of our passage today. And Jesus asks the question to the disciples, who do people say that I am? And so the disciples answer. They know all the answers. They know who people say Jesus is. They know the right answers. And yet you see verse 15, Jesus gets personal. And he says, who do you say that I am? And friends, it's not enough to know about Jesus. It's not enough to know about Christianity to be able to explain the answers that people give. And so Simon Peter says to Jesus, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus then says, yeah, that's good. And then he says to Simon Peter that first you'll be blessed. He says that he will give him the keys of the kingdom of heaven, meaning that, if you like, they can let people into the kingdom of heaven through their preaching, through their witness. And then he says that the church will be built on you. And I don't think he meant that the church will be built just on Peter, but he's talking about Peter's faith. That is what the church will be built on, that faith that Peter has to say with certainty that you are the Christ. You are the Son of the living God. That is what the church will be built on, and not even hell will overcome it. Friends, today, this week, let me encourage you, don't just know the academic things, the answers about Jesus or Christianity. Who do you say Jesus is? Friends, have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow. God bless.